I had somebody that I just recently had to just block because, again, see, a lot of these people think that every YouTuber came out here to look for subscribers or whatever it is. No, 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 no. You see, there are more things that are much more valuable than that aspect of the whole YouTube thing. I enjoy the hobby of talking about video games. I enjoy the hobby about talking about things like this, especially from a business perspective. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes it's nice to make predictions, but again, it's not really predictions because you kind of it's kind of like trend following. Yeah, yeah, it's predictions. You can look at the data, look at where things are going, and you could make some really interesting calls that follow or at least land exactly where you think things will land. It's more like pattern recognition in a sense. Now, this person said something along the lines of, I spend my time worshiping Xbox and so on and so forth, which, is a very interesting categorization of somebody who doesn't like the Xbox console and all that, but whatever, you know what I mean? But here's the thing. Right now, as many of these people are detractors of Xbox and what it is that they're doing, I think their biggest challenge is they fail to be able to mention that right now Xbox is doing a lot of things that are positive as far as the gaming community is concerned. Don't get me wrong, they have their drawbacks in different categories. They do. They have a lot of shortcomings and a lot of failings that can be attributed to them. Now, I think what happened is there's been the fixation of the drawbacks that have been attributed to them by so many people that now they finally reached a point where they can't really turn around and, come back to it. To seeing exactly what, they've basically said. And now that Xbox is making amends and compensating for those things, they just find themselves in a position where they can't acknowledge it. If PlayStation right now did something that changed the entire, perception of their business, oh, they'll be hearing from me. VG will be the one making their video saying, hey, man, you guys are ready to do business? Welcome. This is a good approach to doing things. For sure, you'll be hearing about it. If they provide value that came close to something like Game Pass or whatever it is, oh, you'll see me there. We'll be having the conversation. Because if you actually look at my content, a bunch of videos, you'll realize that when they were making strides to do some of these things, I was championing and rooting for them. In fact, I've been rooting for them and pointing out their flaws because I said, and many people may or may not remember, I do not want to see a world where Xbox dominates PlayStation. They need to be on equal playing field in terms of the way gaming goes. But right now, in the more critical metric, which is in games, PlayStation is lacking behind. It's interesting because this is the most important metric. The most important metric was never console sales. That's the only thing that is basically heralded on the Twitters and on these other small circles where we actually deal with stuff. Does that make sense? And Xbox is basically dominating and pretty much taking PlayStation's lunch, eating their lunch, going into their house, opening their fridge, and still eating more of the leftovers in the fridge. Does that make sense? And how are they doing it? They're spending money on it. Money that PlayStation is going to find very difficult to realize because PlayStation, when it was time to foster this capability of output, they invested it in what I think is a fleeting metric. You see, hindsight is 2020. Let me kind of see if I can put this in a very interesting way. You have a console. In order for you to push this console sales, you go out there and you find as much content as you possibly can. While you're finding content, you're also prohibiting that content from going to your competitor's platform. You could have taken the money and invested in content that your own studios created to create a cycle of inflow and financials for them, but you didn't do that. You invested it in other platforms, other companies, like Take-Two Interactive's GTA from the PS2 days and such, right? And you were investing in all these companies. They were growing and becoming juggernauts. Now they can call their shots. They don't want to do exclusive business with you. And what happens? Your big console, as a hardware piece, goes out of date. You got to kick back into gear with the new hardware. and push again doing the exact same thing, but now without that piece of the puzzle. Your competitor looks around and instead of doing exactly what you didn't even foster and build as much as you perceive that you could, just started buying all that. They bought small studios, then they went out and bought 2 big publishers. And so now your lack of investment is showing, and their bet on investment is showing. And they bet on the most important metric, which is having games. While you, PlayStation, you're trying to now dabble into the trend of live service games. You're canceling games, majority of them, and your cycle in production is taking the regular 6-7 year cycles to get these games out, while they are releasing games almost, it seems, every other month, to the point where they can actually comfortably shadow drop an announcement of a game that they think is coming soon. That is some comfort level that you are not able to disrupt. Not only are they dropping their own games, they now have third-party partners that work with them to be able to make money from all fronts. They're inviting people to come and make money. That's what Game Pass is. They're saying, hey, come into our ecosystem. By the way, we'll hook you up with money for Game Pass and you can go sell your games elsewhere. And more, we're seeing third-party developers take this approach if they can get in on there. While you, PlayStation, your investment is nowhere to be found because you squandered a lot of it investing in other studios, other publishers, other enterprises, rather than investing in your own self. You closed Japan Studio. You closed Deviation Games. You closed Firewalk. You closed all these studios, more studios than they themselves. So now you've left them as a production powerhouse, and look at where you are. All this while I've been pointing out these deficiencies, but they never manifested themselves back then. People were calling me names and saying I hated PlayStation, but I was pointing out that, hey, PlayStation has a gaping hole here, especially after the acquisition of Activision Blizzard King. There's a gaping hole right here that is not yet filled. Then they removed Yoshida, who was the one who was very good at being able to, work on indie games and start to get those projects. And then they tried to invest more in their other team, which is the acquisition team, of which the acquisition team, I don't think they're going to be seeing as much of the success because the gaming industry is saturated. It was a perfect storm. Now your exclusivity that you've basically used to hedge your bets, they're more expensive to make because they're really high premium quality and you don't have a wide variety of games compared to your competitor, so you go put them on PC. You're now facing a very interesting, framework and paradigm in the economic cycle right now. Not only that, Nintendo is at your heels. So I'm just wondering, why everybody is on my case for pointing out the reality of the gaming industry. We're all seeing it. Every single one of us. We're seeing it. Who would have thought that in this particular period of time, that PlayStation will be moving on close to 13 games, all coming from Xbox in a season when they barely have launched anything? I told you guys, I said Xbox's play is going to be to saturate the market, especially PlayStation's market, so that when PlayStation games finally drop, Xbox already has Part 3, sequels and anthologies ready to go. That's going to be basically blocking PlayStation's game's success, thereby creating extra pressure. The exact opposite of the old business model. They've decided to implement it, yet PlayStation never hedged itself. No PC launcher to be able to hold on to your PC users and upsell them like Ubisoft had been doing for a number of years, even though they had to go back to Steam, but they still have that platform, right? No multi-platform presence with majority of your games only when it's convenient for you, like MLB The Show and Legos in such a market. And somewhere, somehow, people want to herald that and say that that's the way to do business. We're seeing it play out. PlayStation is going to need a major adjustment to its business strategy. They will. And the adjustment that I would love for them to make is to simply go at it with Xbox. Right now, they're sitting there, basically trying to depend on console sales. Is that the metric that's going to basically push you into the next generation? That console sales? What pushed you into this console generation were the games. Because I was on PlayStation 4. That's why I comfortably got my PS5 and sold off my PS4, because I was hearing about the games. That's why. But if I see somebody else providing more games at a better value, I don't see where we have a question there. You can be a diehard fan all you want, but I'm telling you right now, a lot of these diehard fans, they're going to have a side Xbox come next gen. That's what you're going to see. They'll have their PlayStation, but man, they're going to go for that side Xbox. Simple. Why? Because they see the proposition. They see that games are flowing everywhere. Guaranteed games. Not just games, but guaranteed games. All over the place. Gamers are much smarter than a lot of people credit them for. And if PlayStation is not adjusting its business strategy, it's going to have to answer some very serious questions as the generation turns over. But we'll let it play out. I'm hoping they do something, because this is Microsoft we're talking about here. Okay? I'll keep my head on a swivel with those ones. Talk to me in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Peace out.